Past lives doesn't feel linear. It feels circular, almost karmic. Not in a mystical way, but in a painfully normal one. Who would I be if one thing had gone differently? I think the entire film is so quietly devastating right from the get-go. And it's purposeful. Celine's song doesn't let you get attached before she wounds you. She lets the wound be the attachment. At the beginning, you're introduced to a pair of kids who have a really sweet relationship with each other. And it's not just childhood sweethearts. It's two kids recognizing each other before language becomes complicated, before ambition, before immigration, before identity fractures. That's why it hurts so much. Nothing went wrong. There's no betrayal, no cruelty, no dramatic rupture. Life just happened. And you start to pick up pretty quickly that everyone is being honest at the same time. It's the reason I love Nora so much. I feel like she might be a polarizing character to some because of how she's trying to handle the situation in. But she was so upfront and honest about everything. She never really tried to be sneaky with what was going on.
Is he attractive?
I think so. He's really masculine in this way that I think is so Korean.
Are you attracted to him?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so.
Did she perhaps underplay certain things? Maybe, but that's not the same thing as lying, you know? She's not managing a secret affair. She's managing a ghost. I don't think she fully understands how to manage the weight of what she's holding. So she's not the villain. She's the site of grief. I think the people who misunderstand her often confuse discomfort with immorality. That bar scene is so uncomfortable because no one is pretending that this is smaller than it is. That's what makes it so tense.
Who do you think they are to each other?
I don't know.
Yeah, this is a hard one. I have no idea.
Arthur isn't being humiliated behind his back. He's present. He consents to being there. He wants to know her inner world, even if it hurts, because loving Nora means loving the parts of her that existed before him. And that's an incredibly painful yet mature thing to attempt. Is it uncomfortable? Yes. Is it morally messy? Yes. Is it unethical? No. Because Nora never weaponizes deception. And this discomfort adds to the movie. I think it gave us a new take on a three-person relationship. I can't really call it a love triangle in the conventional sense. Even though the feelings and emotions of love are clearly there, it's still not that. A love triangle typically has jealousy, competition. Past Lives has none of that because Arthur isn't a rival, Hae-sung isn't an obstacle, and Nora isn't being pulled apart. She's just holding multiple truths at once. Unlike a triangle, this feels uneven, like a shape where the sides don't mirror each other, but they still exist in relation. And so the movie stays with me because I don't have a character or a situation to dump my grief on. We've been conditioned to expect that the childhood sweethearts are meant to make it, to be endgame no matter what. And so when Arthur is introduced as the husband, it would have been so easy for Celine to paint him as a villain, or give him a massive flaw so Nora has an excuse to cheat, or to seek solace in the familiarity of Hae-sung. But Arthur is so kind and understanding. He and Hae-sung aren't rivals. They're representatives of different timelines, and Arthur knows this. So his kindness isn't there to make Nora's choice easier. It's there to remove the possibility of moral shortcuts. Celine refuses to give Nora a clean exit or a villain to flee from. She forces her to choose without justification. All Arthur wants is to be part of Nora's world, and it's not like she's shutting him out or feels like he doesn't belong. Her door is wide open and she is willing to let him be part of her world. And he is, but it's difficult. He doesn't understand it fully, and it circles back to the whole diaspora element when Nora and her family immigrate to America.
You never sleep talking English. You only dream in Korean.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You never told me that.
Most of the times I think it's cute. Sometimes, I don't know. I guess I get scared.
Scared of what?
I'm dreaming a language that I can't understand. It's like there's this whole place inside of you where I can't go.
Diaspora grief is the real third act. This isn't just a film about romance, it's a film about irreversibility. Arthur can love Nora deeply and still never touch the version of her that speaks Korean without translating her soul first. He can learn the language, learn the history, but lived cultural memory just isn't transferable. And Hae-sung isn't just the one that got away. He's the embodiment of a self Nora had to leave behind to become who she is. That's why the question isn't just, what if I stayed for him? It's, who would I be if I hadn't left? And that kind of question doesn't simply leave after 20 years. Who you are is someone who leaves. Hae-sung isn't saying that with any bitterness. He's saying it with clarity, maybe even reverence. He's naming a pattern, not a flaw. Nora left Korea, her childhood self, a language she first loved in, a boy she didn't fall out of love with. She just outgrew the circumstances. And crucially, she didn't leave because she wanted to. She left because life required it of her before she had the capacity to fully understand the outcome. That's where the imprint happens. When leaving is your first major rupture, it doesn't just become something you do. It becomes something your nervous system recognizes as survivable, maybe even necessary, sometimes even clarifying. And that's scary to think about, right? That some people are always in motion, not because they're unstable, but because they were shaped by departure. And I wonder, in this universe, would the pattern continue? Would Nora leave again? But the movie doesn't tell us whether Nora will stay or leave, because that's not the question it's interested in. The real question is, can someone who learned to survive by leaving ever feel at home without losing themselves? And the film doesn't answer it. It just lets us sit with it. It teaches us that absence is formative. The people, the places, the moments we leave behind, the gaps we have, the longing we feel, they shape the architecture of our hearts more than we realize. And so mourning isn't optional, it's inevitable. It all makes me wonder, does Nora have something inside of her where she asks herself, is home a person or a place for me? Will I ever truly find it? Is it in myself? Am I still currently looking? Maybe that's why Arthur is never able to fully be a part of her world. Clash of cultures aside. Because she's got that streak in her where she's built to be the person who has to make a drastic move if she feels it needs to happen. But none of those are permanent containers. Immigration fractures the idea of home because it introduces multiplicity. You don't lose your first home, it just stops being accessible. So you live in a state of partial belonging everywhere. That's why Arthur can love her fully and still never touch the origin of her grief, not because he's lacking, but because that grief predates him. It's ancestral, it's linguistic, It's embedded in the body. People who had to leave young often carry both restlessness and discipline at the same time. Nora isn't impulsive or chaotic. She plans, then she commits to building a life. But when something no longer aligns with her inner truth, she doesn't cling. She moves, and Arthur understands this. That's why he's not possessive. He doesn't try to anchor her with control. He tries to meet her with understanding instead. Just like Hae-sung does. And Hae-sung, he's just so upfront with his feelings for her. Not just in words, but in the way he looks at her, in the way he flies out to see her, to spend time with her, to get to know her, to get to know Arthur as well. It's all in the gaze, the stillness, the willingness to cross oceans knowing there might not be a reward. Because his love isn't strategic, it doesn't try to win. Hae-sung's love is destabilizing because it doesn't demand reciprocation. Something I noticed and really loved was when they're kids, Nora wears yellow and Hae-sung wears blue. And you see that color repeat later on when they're grown up and they reconnect again. I don't know if Celine said anything about this, but I thought that's really clever because blue and yellow, it's like the sun and the sky. And that's what it feels like when you watch these characters dance around each other. I feel like when it comes to Hae-sung and how he feels about Nora, she is his sun. She is the sun. She has people revolving around her because she's such an interesting person. I feel like, in a sense, she's an enigma. That's not me reducing her to a concept or an object or anything like that. I just think it's fitting to describe her. And like the sun doesn't chase the sky doesn't possess the sun. They share space for a while and then they part. Much like we're primed to root for the childhood sweethearts, we've been conditioned to have things neatly tied up by the end. Some relief, a prize for the journey. But we don't get that. We get to sober up with the reality that some loves are real without being meant to continue. But the film doesn't romanticize the one that got away. It tells the harder truth. Some connections are simply meant to shape you, not stay with you. What I love and hate is that we don't get an emotional release in the traditional way. There's no big declaration, no dramatic reveal while music swells. It just sits there. So your body has to do the processing instead. And so, as we hold space for Nora at the end, maybe we reflect on our own life, paths not taken, versions of you that are still alive somewhere in your head, perfectly intact, asking absolutely nothing of you except to be acknowledged. Which brings me to the concept of inyan, a term so beautiful that it became one of those moments in film history when you kind of hold your breath because the scene was so tender.
There's a word in Korean, inyeon. It means providence or fate.
What makes inyan so beautiful is that it removes ownership from connection. It doesn't say you were meant to be together, this person is yours, or this love failed because it didn't last. It says we crossed paths because countless conditions aligned. Even brushing past someone on the street carries thousands of lifetimes of coincidence. That's why it hits the way it does. It reframes connection as grace rather than destiny. This also made me wonder, well, what if we have multiple soulmates in this world, and each one serves a different purpose? Everyone's a different kind of soulmate that we need. I hate to reduce anyone to a lesson or anything like that, but you get what I mean. Some people are just meant to serve a specific purpose in our life, something that only they can do. The idea of one soulmate can be kind of violent when you think about it. It asks one person to meet every single version of you across time. But real life says some people meet the child in you, some meet the self you became to survive, some meet the self you're still growing into, some only walk with you for a chapter, and that doesn't make them less sacred. That's why Haesung isn't replaceable by Arthur, and Arthur isn't interchangeable with Haesung. Haesung and Arthur were never meant to compete because they exist in different dimensions of Nora's life. Arthur represents chosen present, Haesung represents unlived past, and Nora is the through line. They're not competing for the same role. They never were. And it's hard to mourn what once was, isn't it? Mourning the existence of a life that could have been, and how deeply that can leave a scar even decades later. Mourning what once was is less about regret and more about recognition. It's sitting with the fact that a version of yourself, a version of someone you loved, a version of a life existed and will never return exactly as it was. And there's no ceremony for that. There's no closure, just a sigh, a memory, a wave of emotion that can hit you out of nowhere. The final walk, the silence, the way Nora breaks down after Haesung leaves. She's finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of what was already lost decades ago. And I wish she had the chance to just choose for herself. Even if she would have ended up in the same place. Even if she would have ended up choosing Arthur again. Because I think one of the questions that always ends up staying with me after I watch the movie is, what would have happened if Nora just got to make some of the life-altering decisions herself? Because she never got a chance to think about choice. And so, she might always carry the unanswered what if. Even loving Arthur doesn't make that question go away. That's what hurts me. There's no resolve at the end of the movie. Just resilience. And resilience hurts.